Hi there. Today I'm going to talk about the reasons Adolf Hitler became Chancellor in January 1933. Again, it's a really crucial part of the Nazi Germany syllabus in AQA Spec B. When we start looking at how Hitler became Chancellor, the first thing we need to establish is the economic and political conditions at the time. In 1929, October 1929, the Wall Street crash happened in America. Now, how this affected Germany is obviously quite important. American banks had loaned hundreds of millions of marks to German companies in the Weimar government. And with the Wall Street crash, American banks recalled their loans, which had a knock-on effect to Germany and the world all over. So the worldwide economic crisis of 1929 had a huge effect on Germany, which meant that German companies had to lay off workers, were now heavily in debt, went bankrupt, and it resulted in over 6 million Germans losing their jobs and being unemployed in 1932 by that stage. Now this had massive consequences to the stability of the Weimar government, whose economic security was prevalent during the Stresemann era of the late 1920s. That all came crashing down. And it created the climate for change. People's pre-existing hatred of the Weimar government and anti-Treaty of Versailles sentiment came back to the forefront of their minds, which is important because it allowed fringe parties like the Nazis and the Communist parties to tap into this anger and disenchantment at the political order at the time. Well, the Nazis were relatively well funded by industrialists like Tyson and Hugenberg, and they, whilst the French party, were able to tap into people's anger. And we know, we discussed earlier in a previous video about Hitler's skill at public speaking and getting rather complex matters simplified and making vague promises. Well, with the rise in unemployment came a rise in the Communist Party. And extremist parties in general received a lot more support, the Nazis being one of them. And the Nazis painted themselves really as the saviour from a communist takeover. People were incredibly scared of what happens in USSR, Russia at the time, happening in Germany, and people did not want that to happen. So Hitler was seen as, by some, as the last hope. Nazi propaganda portrayed Hitler as somewhat of a saviour. And it helped that the SA, or the SA, were fighting street battles with communists in the streets, and this was quite visual to a lot of Germans, so that actually the Nazis are going to save us from communism. Well, Brüning, the Chancellor at the time, felt it best to cut welfare to German people, which created more unpopularity and less trust in the Weimar government. And in 1930 they had the elections, which went incredibly badly for Brüning and incredibly well for the Nazis. This is when they got 107 seats. Which was a huge success, and overnight the Nazis became the second largest political party in Germany. While Brüning was unable to have a majority, very few chancellors ever did, in fact I don't think any chancellor actually did, and he needed President Paul von Hindenburg to make laws for him using Article 48 of the Constitution, which was undemocratic and further undermined the stability of the Weimar government. This continued for further months. Brüning ended up losing his power, and Franz von Papen became Chancellor. And in July 1932, von Papen and Hindenburg, who were close friends, decided to call an election. Well, this is when the Nazis really became the largest party in the Weimar government. They received 230 seats, which wasn't quite enough for a majority. There was 584 seats in the Reichstag, and that wasn't quite enough. And Hitler demands to be Chancellor, as you could argue he should probably have done. He is the largest political party, but Hindenburg refuses to allow Hitler to become Chancellor. And von Papen continues to be running the Reichstag with no majority, with very little support. And in an attempt to get support, von Papen calls another election in November 1932. Well, this was actually a bit of a disaster for the Nazi Party. They received 196 seats, which is 34 less than before. And the Nazis were quickly running out of funds, and at this stage Hitler was very downbeaten, even contemplated suicide according to some sources. Because they were running out of money, they couldn't really afford to fight another election. Von Papen, that's him, not necessarily gone, because he still stays as an advisor to Hindenburg, but Hindenburg chooses Kurt von Schleicher to be the new president. However, Kurt von Schleicher has no popularity. He's an old army general, and so is not really able to run. So his rule in the Reichstag lasts all of 1 month. Well, Hitler really is the only option left, and Hindenburg and von Papen, as well as some high-ranking industrialists, meet behind closed doors and decide really to allow Hitler to become Chancellor. So in January, the 30th of January 1933, to some people's shock, Hindenburg decides to make Hitler Chancellor. So he's not voted in, he's chosen by the rich industrialists and the political elites, Hindenburg and von Papen. Now, von Papen is made Vice-Chancellor, and Hindenburg and von Papen at the time think they can control Hitler. And I think at the time they probably were quite right. The cabinet was going to make the decisions, and von Papen had a lot of influence over that. And Hindenburg was, let's not forget, president, who could get rid of Hitler if he so wished. However, they were very much mistaken, and I discussed in a previous post how Hitler is able to turn the Weimar government from a democracy to a dictatorship. Thank you very much.